So anyway,
Remember
sorry for the
November, yeah.
dissociation. Sorry for the dissociation, but
No, that's
it
right.
was
We
truly
are recording.
goodbye that.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Regeneration. It is 6 after. We're going to go ahead and kick this thing off. So we've already gone to the bottom of the rabbit hole, so there's no way to go but up from here. So we're going to have a great interview today with Mr. Larry Davis, a practitioner who has been moving the needle and doing it economically viable the whole time because you should get paid for doing good work, right? So, guys, I'm so excited about this interview. Today, during session one, we're going to talk more about Larry and get caught up to some of his work on here. And then session two is all going to be about how you can monetize your work and how you can do this work and get paid by this exact same companies that we're not fans of to do. So let's make their money work for us. So, Larry, we're so grateful and happy to have you here. We'd like to kick off, if you don't mind. Just could you share a little bit about yourself and get us caught up to all the great things about you? And could you spend about 5 to 10 minutes on this, please?
Yeah, sure. And it's great to meet everyone. So I'll tell a quick story. So I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. My folks moved up here back in the 40s and 50s. A lot of them were in agriculture down in the South, and then they relocated here to find some opportunities working at the ports, longshoremen's, that type of work. And so 2, 3 generations later, my sister and I showed up, and we're still here, and we love this place. And we, at least in my introduction into the environmental sustainability space, started in 8th grade. I was on a field trip uh, by a teacher by the name of Mr. Hong, who took us on a boat uh, on the Patapsco River, which is the main river in Baltimore. And we had a chance to learn about oysters and crabs and a bunch of stuff. And so got a chance to plant some of those oysters and really kind of sowed a seed for us to get into understanding how we can use nature-based things to improve not just the environment, but also our connection to the environment, us as people, and um, and then also how we do life. That kind of segmented going through high school, going deeper down studies and focus in environmental science and technology. And then that progressed to college, again, going deeper down the rabbit hole of learning about nature-based technologies, and eventually led into this entrepreneurial endeavor. I never really worked a normal 9 to 5. It was always a contracting this or a hustle that, or, you know, filling in needs as they come. And so there was a time where it seemed to make sense of different things studied over the years and with mentors and colleagues of eventually starting a venture around how we can develop these types of technologies and hopefully do them at scale. So, um, so that's a little bit of the beginnings of it, but happy to go into more detail as we go through the conversation.
Alrighty, I appreciate that. All right, let's jump in. Guys, excuse me, guys and gals. As always, if you have questions or feedback or something in there, throw it in chat and we'll weave that into the conversation. If it's ambiguous and confusing, I might bring you out to clarify. We'll see and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So let's jump into it. Everyone in chat is the link to the Google Doc. If you want to follow on, you can see our speaker sheets. I'm on session number one. And that's our questions we'll be going through today. So, Larry, take us back. What was the moment or experience that pulled you toward nature-based environmental engineering rather than conventional infrastructure?
So I was just sharing about how that field trip with Mr. Hong and planting oysters, that was back probably 2009 when that happened. And that was an interesting year because the same year that I went on that field trip and we learned about oysters and water quality and all that fun stuff, that was actually the same year that my grandfather had passed away. And part of it, what was passing was because of him working down at a steel mill for a number of years, and the impacts of air quality, pollution, and other types of poor air quality over the years that led to different health hiccups, and that led to his passing. And so it was a combination of both that event and also the field trip that kind of gave this light bulb moment of, wow, nature-based solutions aren't just about improving the environment, but it's also improving the quality of life for people. It made me think about, like, hey, like if we had more oysters, or if we had other interventions through those decades and times and years when my grandfather was working all those hours and all those days, maybe his lifestyle would have been different, or his health could have been different. So that's a seed, you could say, that created not just an interest for wanting to understand more nature-based solutions, but it also made it personal. It wasn't just about starting a business. It's a personal element to it. I think in regards to nature, there's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of processes that we are still learning about. And there are already embodied solutions in how nature flows, how everything is connected, how both with the living and non-living sets of systems. And if there's a way you can tap into that through low tech or not sophisticated instruments, but localized material and some basic designs, you can really have your cake and eat it too, as far as for bettering the environment and bettering people and bettering our lifestyles. So that's kind of some of the interests that led to an interest for, again, nature-based solutions and in our projects. So
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to do a little variation on this number 2 here. So Green Mechanics is now in its 7th year. Can you just briefly talk about 7 years? How many projects? How many countries? Just give us the quick stats, because I think people need to maybe understand sort of like how successful and how much of an impact you've been able to make in just 7 years' time.
yeah, 7 years. COVID changed opportunities, changed landscapes, but within that, a total of, I believe, 28 or 29 projects across, I would say, at least a few countries, and many, many, many partnerships and stakeholders and collaborations. And it's gritty, and it was tough, and it still is tough, but definitely worth every second for sure.
Larry, how old are you?
29.
Guys, that's awesome, right? Green Mechanics is now in its 7th year, so most environmental tech firms don't make it past 5 or year 5. When you started, what did you have to convince people that nature could actually do? Can you talk us sort of like the journey of how you sort of jumped into it and evolved?
Well, it's one of the big challenges we had at the beginning is there are so many different types of nature-based technologies. There are so many technologies that could help solve so many problems in the world. It's ridiculous. It then asks the question of, okay, why haven't those technologies been deployed? Why have they not been developed at scale? What have been the barriers that allow for entry to happen? And over time, through different accelerators, so business accelerators, incubator programs, all you can think of all the verbs from empowerment to incubated to accelerated to all of that. The question that keeps coming up is human-centered design. So thinking about people, thinking about their needs, how do people view their problems? How do you solve their problems in a way that is compelling and that person can see themselves as a part of the solution? That changed the narrative of how our language is used for how we engage our stakeholders. So instead of saying, hey, we offer this really innovative technology that can help provide these benefits. It's more of a practical, hey, so when we set up this system, this is going to give you back 3 hours a day that you were using to try to solve a problem that you really couldn't get a solution to. Or this is going to help make your life or your agency's life a lot easier because now you've got a lower, you have a more cost-effective solution that's going to save you more time and energy. This is going to give you more time back with your family. Like language like that, that really, that gets people's attention. So language, I think language and how we tell the stories is kind of the way that we hope to engage our partners and stakeholders and our customers, and letting them know that we really care about them as much as the entity that they're involved with. So I would say that. I think that's what's changed throughout the years.
You keep saying nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions is more of like a recent term. It was much less common sort of back when you were starting this. Have you always sort of been in this, or have you sort of graduated to this sort of terminology?
I think it's a graduation to it. There's been words from or phrases like eco technologies. But when I was introduced to the term nature-based solutions, we often call it ecologically engineered solutions. So it's ecology, engineering, design. Nature-based solutions seems to have surfaced probably, I don't know, maybe in the last couple of years, maybe some time right after COVID. And it seemed to resonate. And well, if it resonates with people, then we'll use the phrase, you know. But there's been iterations of different terms, but it's all embodying the same process. So, yeah.
Walk us through what agile turf scrubbers actually are, and well, actually, yeah, sort of give us a background and sort of like what are some of the technologies? Let's before we get into this one, what are some of the technologies and maybe some of the methodologies that you've leveraged successfully within your growth through green mechanics?
Sure. So again, there's a lot of different technologies, and some of these items I'm going to list, you're going to think, really, that's a technology? It is. So, for instance, trees, for example, that's a nature-based technology approach. Well, you're like, it's a tree. Well, depends on what tree you're planting, where, how it's placed, and what amendments you're using to plant that tree. Green spaces, if you're in cities or urban environments, those green spaces that you may look at and say, hey, this is just soil, some wood chips, some shrubs, but that's a nature-based technology because that helps to, one, capture rainwater that accumulates from storm events. And when we're in urban environments or just large landscapes, during rainstorm events, you've got millions of gallons of water that are traveling and moving fast and quickly. And so those green spaces offer a buffer, a sponge condition for where that water can be decreased in speed. It can slow that water down. And the soils and the bacteria and the microbes all provide that treatment. But walking by that on a sidewalk on a day-to-day, you're like, oh, it's green space, it's nice. But that's providing a nature-based solution. Going back to the trees, trees are great for temperature offsets. You could go down into a city. We're starting to get into the summertime here. 90 degree, or actually an 80-degree temperature day. If you're in a city and you've got asphalt and concrete and all this impervious surface, all that material is absorbing energy. So an 80-degree day is actually 110 plus degree day for someone that's not surrounded by green infrastructure, the trees, the green spaces, because there's no way to mitigate that temperature. So these are more day-to-day nature-based solutions that can often be overlooked, but
Mhm.
they're doing a lot for us. And so now there are some unique, nuanced technologies that I'm going to share more about, and I think you referenced it earlier, which are algal turf scrubbers. And you think, what the heck is that? Uh, so should I go into that now or should I wait, Sage? What would you recommend?
This one, let's just keep it a high level of the different technologies. So algal Turk scrubbers. Are there any other sort of ones you want to briefly mention at this time?
Sure. Algal turf scrubbers. There's what's called biochar. Think of this as charcoal. Um, you can apply it to soil and other types of settings for bettering soil health and water treatment and etc. We're also working with bus shelters. So we've reinvented designs around bus shelters to include solar and plants and artistry to make a more equitable bus shelter experience for people who use public transportation, just to name a few.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Um, I don't know John Todd. Do you know John Todd? And can you, if you do know John, can you explain how your work may or be similar or different from his?
I've never met him, but he's definitely a hero in my book in this space with um, living machines where using plants and tanks and aeration really embodies the chemistry for providing wastewater treatment um, that offers just as well or close to the same results that you would get from a very expensive wastewater treatment plant. And using plants and storage and tanks. And I was introduced to John Todd back in school and college, and that was one of those moments where I was like, okay, this would be great to get into because this really embodies this thesis of nature-based solutions. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. So let's talk about turf scrubbers, sorry, and what it actually is and why you bet the firm on that technology. What does it solve that conventional stormwater treatment cannot?
Sure. So like John Todd, there's another hero of mine. His name is Dr. Walter Ady, who I've actually just met recently. So he's the inventor of algal turf scrubbers. Now, what those systems are is a nature-based approach to collect algae from existing water resources. So think your rivers, your lakes, your large ponds. Algae already exist in those water resources, and we often see it as algal blooms. Algal blooms can cause challenges because they affect our habitat. They can also affect our drinking water if there's too much algae to be processed at, let's say, a wastewater treatment plant. And so algal turf scrubbers are essentially using a pump, designing some flowways that allow for water to be pumped up from that pond, that lake or river into these flowways that allow for the algae to grow and park itself on the system. And then water continues to leave and return back out to the environment. And the cool thing is that as that algae continues to grow on the flowway, more water that's pumped into the system, that algae will actually start to remove those nutrients out of the water. That's what allows the algae to grow on the system. And so now you're getting a nature-based approach for improving water quality by partnering with algae, pumping water, letting it drain back out to the environment. And you can show increased water quality benefits. You can harvest the algae. You can store it. And we've been working on other applications of how you can use that algae for other development, especially in the fertilizer and construction industry.
That's awesome. Um, Tell us about the work with the African American waterfront community dealing with a contamination from a nearby coal power plant. What was the situation when you got there, and what did the project look like by the end? And if you can, what were some of the challenges you faced that you weren't expecting?
So this is the last predominant that we're aware of, the last predominant African American waterfront town, at least in the state of Maryland, but I dare say in the Chesapeake Bay. And this town was established almost 100 years ago because various African American families that couldn't get access to waterfront properties in DC ventured out into Maryland and founded this town right off the Patapsco River. And back in the 60s, there was a coal power plant that was installed adjacent to the town. And so this is before EPA and clean air and clean water. And so there's a precedence that was set far as for, hey, did this power plant have impacts on this town's well water? They're right on the Patuxent. There's not a water utility infrastructure. Everyone's on septic and well water. Is there a clean bill of health for the residents that live in the town? There, for decades, not much knowledge, not much research, not much data gathering on things like their soil and their water or biologics like crabs, oysters. People like to fish for oysters and crabs off the river. What are the baselines for that? We don't know. And so part of our recent efforts through various funding sources have been to, one, collect data on those different baselines. So that way we could get an understanding of what, if any, need to be met for the community. And then developing nature-based solutions to help meet those needs. So let's say going back to the algal turf scrubbers, maybe there's a need for water quality improvements for better oysters and crab conditions. So we could set up algal turf scrubbers adjacent to the town. Maybe it's more around water filtration systems. So right now we're working to install, we secured funding to install water filter systems on all of the town residents for their homes and their community center. So regardless of whether their well water scores are high or low, there's a peace of mind, there's a quality assurance, there's a pathway forward to say, hey, I don't need to go to the store and get bottled water because I don't know if my well water is safe to utilize. They'll have a peace of mind moving forward regardless. And some of the challenges, I think, working with the community, not the community itself, but finding solutions is there are different groups of people, whether it's at the university level, whether it's entities like the Green Mechanics or some of our nonprofit partners. We're all operating in different silos. So one group that we didn't learn was doing work around air quality research for this municipality. We had no idea that they were working on their research for supporting this town. We were covering more aspects of like soil and water, but then there were other stakeholders. We're all operating in these different silos. And so it's been a process for us to self-organize and gather. And then how do we stack all of our co-benefits of supporting this town to make sure that we're driving project development forward, we're improving the quality of lives at the town. And then also it makes a better succinct narrative. Sometimes town residents were wondering, okay, wait, you're from which group? And you're doing what again? Okay, wait, that's another group. Okay. So synchronizing everyone together just made a better experience, not just for us, for providing benefits and supporting the town, but also for the residents themselves.
Can you talk about the experience now as far as like, does the community feel like they have much better solution? You said you're installing filters right now for the community members, but you've already done a lot of other things. Can you talk about sort of the success overall as far as how this is done for that community?
Well, it's been a process. When we first secured funding to do baseline monitoring for the town, our funding was discontinued because of some of the federal changes that took place. And it was in the midst of that data collection to help inform our decision making, funding is cut. We then had to go back out, get another grant to then secure funding for putting in filter systems. And it's been a process. It's been a lot of back and forth with our partners and litigations while also trying to serve the town. It hasn't been easy, and it causes delays, and we wanted to get this work done way sooner, but we only could work with what we're given at that time on a day-to-day basis. So it hasn't been easy, and it's been a struggle, but we will get there, and we'll continue to persevere until the work is done.
How has partnerships affected this? Has partnerships made this sort of easier because you can team up on grant opportunities? Like, what has partnerships really done for this? Because it is unique that a lot of people see sort of that siloed isolation and say, okay, let's pull it all together. I think the silos happen just in general, but the fact of being able to see across that and sort of pull that together into a collective, that's pretty rare. So how has that helped or hurt?
Well, I think you're asking a great question. It's more so like, how did the silos get there in the first place? Right. And my opinion on this is that I think part of the reasons why those silos exist is that there's not an obvious need for each other in collaboration. So, for instance, when there was a surplus of grant resources, when there was a surplus of resources, it, from my perspective, creates a paradigm of, okay, I have enough to do what I need to do. So there's not as much of an obvious interest or pursuit or need to partner and collaborate because I have all that I need to do what I need to do. And I think with cuts and reduced resources and fill in the blank, I think it opened up folks' eyes to the fact that we do actually need each other in collaboration in order to solve problems. And I think the illusion was and is that the illusion is that we didn't need each other, but we always did. It's just more obvious today. And so in those partnerships, it allows for us to ask better questions around what the problems are. And if we can better understand the questions or understand the problems, we can then hopefully come up with better solutions. I think that in itself is the beauty and the benefit of partnerships and collaboration is that we're all looking at a problem, but we all see different angles. And if we're willing to ask good questions, allow people to voice and articulate, I think we can get to solutions a lot faster.
How do you feel that the Earth and your bioregions that you're working on have also benefited from this collaborative type work? Do you see the ability of you guys to do more as a collective heavy lifting, or what do you see around this?
Sure. I'm going to jump back to the algal turf scrubbers as a way to answer that. So when you think of regions, you are thinking about systems, and we're as much a part of the system as the ecologies. So you've got transportation, you've got logistics, you've got water, air, sunlight, you've got all these different layers in the system. And that's embodied energy. Embodied energy as there's investments, there are resources, and even on the ecological side, there's energy that's needed to create biomass and systems and ecosystems that then all collaborate. So in our different regions, we often think about when we do our projects, what's the way in which we can create the most impact and benefit with the least amount of energy that's embodied? So with the algal turf scrubbers, we hedged our bet towards that technology as it relates to not only improving water quality, because we're not expending all these resources to get heavy equipment or chemicals or advanced technology or the resources needed to hire a whole bunch of people to do a task. We're sourcing local materials at a with local volunteers to drive high impact. And that's only on the water quality front. When we start talking about some of the other progress that we've made in taking the algae that we've collected from those systems and then developing, turning the algae into sustainable hardscape material. So we can take the algae and develop tiles that you can use for your homes, for flooring, also for landscapes, art landscapes. We're also working to see how we can utilize the algae for cement and concrete creation. So I'm tying that back into energy and resources for our different regions. When you think about the energy that's needed to make cement and how environmentally unfriendly that is, versus if we can source local materials like algae to lessen the load, lessen transportation, lessen shipping logistics, right? Those are all combined compounding variables that reduce strain on our different bioregions. So now, again, you can have your cake, you need a lot of it in the water quality department, in construction, fertilizers. I know farmers are taking a heavy hit on fertilizers right now. Algae is embodied nutrients for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, etc. And leveraging that for advancing soil health and also helping farmers to meet their pollution offsets every time they practice or perform agriculture. So now it's a double benefit of water quality compliance and also bettering their farm unit economics. It all scales, and it all scales at a bioregional approach. So
I love it. I love it. You just talked about a lot of like processing as well. For instance, like algae to be used in a number of different sort of situations here. Aren't all those incredibly complicated, or are they pretty easy to do? Because some of that sounded intense, but I don't know any better.
well, some of the pathways are more straightforward. So for
Hmm.
fertilizers, for example, it's knowing how much of your, you know, carbon to nitrogen ratios are, and you can do some basic tests um, to see what those percentages are. And then again, going back to partnerships, then we're able to say, okay, based on the data that we collected, we can partner with, let's say, our partners, the 2020 Cooperative for Black Farmers, to say, hey, we can offer discounted algae fertilizers to um, their co-op for Black farmers to help boost their economics. When we talk about tile and construction materials, that gets a little bit more complex. And that's honestly required some partnerships with some of our colleagues that have PhDs in material science. But it's kind of asking questions around how are current processes developed for, let's say, making cement, and then translate that to how can we achieve that same goal through a nature-based approach. So in this case, the algae that we collect and harvest has a special chemistry that is very helpful for tile and potentially cement creation. So that was a basic question that we could then kind of build and scale from there. So some of it's easier than others, but with enough people at the table, you can make it happen.
I love it. Thank you so much. You've worked across the Mid-Atlantic, and internationally in Uganda, South Africa, Liberia, Brazil, Egypt, Dominica. What's a story from one of those projects that shaped how you think about this work differently? Did you have sort of any epiphany moments where it kind of changed your mindset going forward?
Yeah, I think I'm going to tell you a quick story of a couple of students in Uganda.
Hmm.
And again, going back to partnerships. So we're partnered with a nonprofit called Roots Africa. And their whole thesis is around supporting, it's not about charity for Roots Africa. It's about how do you empower leaders, we call them change makers, So the thesis is Roots Africa pairs mentors and financial resources to agriculture African entrepreneurs to develop businesses. And they develop their business models to go out and help train and inform and improve farmers in these nations' farm economics. And as the farmers make more money, there's a revenue share back to those businesses. So it allows for scalability and it allows for resiliency. So I'm a mentor with Roots Africa. And so one of our entrepreneurial groups that was a nature-based solution on using what are called black soldier flies, which are these insects that are really good at munching and eating food waste. And the larvae grows at a really fast pace, where the business model is that they're able to take the larvae and sell it as a high protein feedstock for their chickens and other livestock that farmers may be utilizing. And the larvae also excrete out high quality fertilizer and soil amendment that the farmer can use for their agricultural practices. So now you've got a low tech approach. The nature in this based approach is the larvae that's producing high protein feedstock that is getting more expensive and high quality fertilizer. And this is using, a $500 investment into this agricultural nature-based startup is helping to serve dozens of farmers and make thousands of dollars, which in those nations scales a lot higher than it does here in the US. And again, it's a nature-based approach. So it's not expensive equipment. It's not all this robust technology, but yet it allows an ability to scale, both in nations that don't have as high as a per capita, maybe here in the US or in other places, but the scalability still works nonetheless from what I've observed. So I thought that might be a decent story to share about.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Let's go back to Uganda and let's talk about the refugee camps there. So there's a question in chat about what the role is of planting bamboo to preserve the lake water that's diminishing in these refugee camps. Are you familiar with this, and can you talk some about this?
I haven't worked this much on it, so I'll be limited in my response. I would say that I'll isolate bamboo just as a topic and then maybe share a thought or two as it relates to in Uganda.
Mm-hmm.
So to some folks, bamboo is an invasive and there are native bamboos. It's a very domineering species in different systems, but for us, we look at that as embodied energy and nutrients. And there's this term in ecological engineering, so same term of nature-based solutions, ecological engineering. We often live by this tenet called self-organization. What that is a fancy term is to say that ecosystems tend to tilt towards a certain direction, meaning that if this system tilts more towards bamboo being the prevalent species, then rather than trying to exert all this energy and resources and time to try to remove the bamboo, how can we work with those embodied flows and patterns to then be a benefit to other locations and other species or people, etc. So again, I don't know what exactly is going on in Uganda in that regard. I would love to learn more, but I tend to default to a self-organization perspective to then see how we can ask better questions to hopefully solve a challenge or a problem there. So.
Okay. Rick, you can come off of mute, but be quick, please,
Oh,
sir.
no, I'll be very quick. The reason why I said that, because I heard somebody on a refugee camp doing this very practice that I'd never heard of it before. So my question is, what would be a better strategy rather than than planting bamboo, if indeed it's effective? I'd never heard of it before. That's why I
Oh,
asked.
oh, I see. Okay. I'll briefly say I think there's a lot of opportunity around using bamboos for, let's say, for either water quality benefits if you can strategically plant the bamboo. You can also convert it into what I was saying earlier, biochar, which is basically charcoal, but it's got a unique chemistry that can be great for carbon credits, great for soil amendment. Biochar can be used as a potential water filtration approach if you structure it properly. Um, there's a lot you can do with bamboo, construction material. Um, there's a lot there. So,
When we're looking at nature-based solutions to water management in Africa, all right, what are some of the areas of ignorance and common mistakes around nature-based solutions?
that's a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer right now.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of layers there, and I think I'm going to need a few more minutes to figure out how to best answer that.
Sorry, we'll circle back on that one.
Yeah, yeah.
So for the entrepreneurs in this room, environmental tech founders, nature-based practitioners, right? What's the single most important thing you wish someone had told you in year one that you had to learn on your own? So I'll go ahead and field this one first with Larry, but I'd love you guys, if you can, to throw in chat some of the things you've learned about nature-based practicing or doing this work that maybe you wish you learned sooner. So Larry, what's the one thing that you wish you learned maybe in eighth grade?
Yeah, yeah. Oh boy. I would say so some of the challenges we had when we first got going and so there are current solutions of how problems are solved in an industry. So I mentioned trees, green spaces, swales, green roofs, et cetera, et cetera. These are established current solutions towards, let's say, improving stormwater, water quality frameworks. You start introducing topics like algal turf scrubbers and algae and improving water quality. Sometimes it gets people are like, what? What is that? And then you're talking taking algae and doing this all other crazy. It's like, so there's a learning curve and there's education. There's consistent, um, you have to create awareness in order to gain trust for people to want to collaborate and work together. I think we strained ourselves in the first part of starting the venture by just solely putting all of our energy and time of trying to validate the technology from getting projects developed. And I think in that interim period, I think if we had focused on, let's say, doing stormwater management maintenance contracts that maybe isn't algae related, but it is improving water quality and stormwater. And those are clients and entities ready to pay for service today, right? So it gives a pathway for, it would have given us a stronger pathway of more financial resources to uh, invest back into our R&D, research and
Mhm.
development, for then pushing more of the technology out. Um, and I think it would have given us more access to other financial products that and cash flow to then be able to utilize more resources and capital to then again expand out some of our different technologies and innovations. So I think that's something that I wish I had known or should have done at the beginning. So I think it would have saved a lot more time and heartache. But then it was just like it was COVID and the world was coming to an end, and it's just like it's whatever. We'll do what we can.
Do you feel that's a common problem? Like you had just kind of identified that. I mean, maybe a lot of us tend to lead with the solution and sort of like we like to be fixers, but sometimes I feel like we need to sit in it more to understand things a little bit better. Is that kind of like what you're hinting at as far as maybe a common underlying theme?
Yeah, it's it's we all have challenges and problems that we would like to have solved, and we all want to be heard, and there's a language behind that. And it kind of goes back to what I was sharing at the beginning of this conversation. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter if you've got a system technology that can solve someone's problem. If they don't see it as a problem, or they don't see how the technology is relatable to them, how they can be a part of the solution, or if that person doesn't even know that they have a problem, um, you're not getting far, So
Hmm.
it's you got to listen, you got to meet people where they're at, and then take the steps to say, okay, now that I've been able to support that person, that entity, etc., in solving an immediate problem that they had, that establishes trust. And then from that trust, then allows for us to introduce new things and introduce new awareness that that entity or person may not have been aware of. And they're like, okay, well, let's try this out because there's established trust. But it's a lot of listening and then also a willingness to change and pivot, not away from your thesis, but again, going back to the algal turf scrubber, maybe the time isn't now to put all our eggs and energy into that. Right now, we need to focus on securing more contracts or trusts from our different clients that will then enable us to speed up our process to get more algae harvesting systems at scale. Maybe that's a better, faster pathway rather than just trying to pull our hair out on just focusing on this one thing.
After doing a lot of research on community hubs and sort of like community impact type solutions, I feel like what you just described is a common problem throughout, where sometimes we have maybe a capex or an investment to build something big, but the ability for that to be successful sometimes is not there while we try to build energy to maintain it. So building that trust and crawl, walk, run kind of deal to lay that stepping stone to get where you want to go is so important. And often we tend to lose sight of that because we're like, we want to do this thing, this big thing on there. I feel like I'm uh, sort of describing like we get caught up in that end solution so much that we forget those little bitty steps. And I am finding some of those things myself, even is that so many times in those first conversations, you don't need to say anything at all. It is just about the other part or party being heard. And that's just so apparently that just so important. And we forget that so much. Catherine, if you're there, could you come on camera for a minute? I got a question for you. Oh, you are there. Catherine,
I'm are
so
there. Yes.
you're one of like the biggest nature practitioners that I've known because you have been working through this for so long. So, same question to you that I just asked Larry. If someone, or excuse me, or what's the most important thing that you wish someone had told you in year one of you going down your route?
What I still want to know, actually, is to address exactly what Larry was talking about from our perspective. And I'm sorry, I had a distraction here. So Larry, if you answered my question, I did not hear you. So if I'm asking questions now, that's where that comes from. Um, what what I feel is the rock bottom most important thing we can do if we really want to carry on this planet is to learn to nurture our soil. I don't think there's anything else that we can do that is going to have a bigger impact than that. Largely because we're actually running out of water, of fresh water, because it's evaporating. And the soil that we have is so deteriorated, it's not holding it when it comes down. And so we're getting into this drought flood cycle because the water can't stay in the soil, which is where it wants to be. And that is so hard for people to understand. They just really dismiss soil. It's just the stuff you walk on. Yeah, maybe I'll put a little compost on it if I really need to, but I don't really pay a lot of attention to it. The biochar that Larry mentioned earlier is certainly a baby step in that direction. We talk about that too, and we're doing a pilot project around that here in our city. But um, I I haven't been able to, I don't have a story. I don't have, uh, I mean, we have demonstration projects. We've got tons of demonstration projects all over the world where they've done magical things with that. But somehow that message is just not getting in there. And so, Larry, if you've got ideas, I would love to hear how you're able to open people's ears on that because that's just it. So far, it has been a really awkward one for me.
Well, we'll definitely have to get some tea and and
Love
talk
to,
more
love to.
offline because like I said, I don't have it figured out. But
That's fine.
eh,
Or
again,
darker.
I guess I'm a broken record here. I think, how would I say this? It's like we all speak a language, but we have different dialects,
Yeah.
you know? That trust
I
factor
do
for
like,
change and collaboration is there's something in that. So
Yep.
that's what I was going to say.
yeah,
Catherine, if you didn't hear what Larry was talking about as far as like stepping out trust as well, I think that's
Yes.
so important. And
And it just takes time.
that's the frustrating part is the time it takes. And I do feel like if you take too long, you run into the barrier of those change makers rotating through based on politics change or
Yep. Yep.
administrations
Yep.
type change
Yep.
within that as well. And
Yep.
so I feel like you're running against two bottlenecks, too short because there's not enough trust built, or too long and the people that are holding that energy might rotate out. So
Yep.
I think that's a very hard one to navigate. I think that'd be a really fun conversation overall in GRC to sort of talk about where we find that sweet path or that sort of that zone that does work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love that.
sure.
Let me finish my last questions then, Larry. So I got 4 questions left, and we have about 2 minutes. Catherine, thank you so much.
Sure.
Larry, what's one question I should have asked if I was a smarter man and I would have thought about this a little more thoughtfully? What's one question I should have posed today?
I thought you did a good job.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, so, uh, Larry, how would you replicate and or scale your solutions that you have right now? So you have a number of tools in the toolkit in your bag of repertoire that you can sort of move out there. Um, I hear you saying trust to move things out, but what are some of the things that you'd really like to scale?
Sure. So we're looking to scale algal turf scrubbers. Here in the Mid-Atlantic region, there has not been a scaled algal turf scrubber ever. We want to do that as an invitation for people to say how this solution technology can then be scaled in their region. Obviously, I talked about the circular benefits of the technology and scaling those initiatives and efforts. We then also want to scale knowledge and awareness through, let's say, the bus shelter systems, the green roof solar bus shelter systems, because not only is it providing some environmental benefits, but it's also a way to highlight knowledge through documents or art, community art, showcased at the bus shelters. We want to highlight local artists that we are collaborating with to have people take a look and gain awareness as they're getting on the bus to and from.
I think bus shelters are like the water coolers. I mean, it's kind of like a powerful location that maybe is very underutilized as far as awareness and education.
Yeah, it's a good triple point. You got
Yeah.
people, and then there's a shortage of bus shelters too. We're like missing like a million bus shelters right now in the US. People cook at them. I know that's hyperbole, but you know, it gets hot. It gets really hot there. So,
Yeah.
and you're not thinking about anything else, but if you can cool your head off for a couple of minutes and see some of the stuff hanging out at the bus shelter, we think those are some opportunities. And then corporate sponsorship. So corporations, they can sponsor bus shelters or sponsor different types of information.
Mhm.
They can sponsor, they can be a part of the solution as well.
Yeah. So, guys, this is really kind of wrapping up our session one. Next week, we're going to pivot and we're going to talk about how do these projects become financially viable. And Larry, how many projects have you worked on for free?
Yes,
Yes, the answer is yes. And how many projects have you gotten funded? Let's ask that one.
Um, so we've had 28 funded projects, and then the ones that are free, those have been through like capstone projects or working with universities, et cetera, et cetera. So
Hmm.
probably double the amount, so probably 50 some odd projects that have been for free. So,
At 29, I'm in awe of you, my friend. That's a lot of really good work. So next week, guys, we're going to go into how can we make this stuff work for us? How can you help find sponsors? How can you get your projects funded? How can you, um, what looks impossible, make something work, not only work and scale it locally, but have someone in a completely different bioregion pay for that as well. So we're going to talk about corporate sponsorships. We're going to talk about carbon credits, and we're going to talk about all this good stuff of how do we solve some of these things that seem unsolvable and help do that with getting paid to do so. So, Larry, anything else about next week that you're excited about that you want to share that I didn't sort of hit on there?
no, I think you were very thorough. I was
All
like,
right,
wow, he
good,
knows me.
good. Good. All right, guys. So this wraps up today's Regeneration meeting. We'll stay here, and if you guys can have questions, come on off of chat, off of mute, and you can throw whatever questions you're out there. We'll stay for about 15 minutes or so, and this is an open session. So, Catherine, Rick, Dr. Brian, Nick, Tanuja, Cheyenne, David, Tristan, thank you guys so much for joining us today. If you guys have any more questions, come on off of mute and let's chat and open up the floor a little bit. Go ahead, Rick. You're on mute, sir.
I just want to make sure you see the chat. There's a guy called Larry that I'd like to meet up with. I'll explain details offline, but it's really about how to scale up the work that you're doing, particularly focusing in Africa. I did do an AI search on the question that you were going to take a few minutes responding to,
Yeah,
and I've actually you can go to a downloaded document there, and if you have time to review it, you can perhaps identify any hallucinations or incorrections in the document. It's quite an extensive document, but I think this is an example of how we can use AI in real time to answer questions that we don't have time to answer. And if you have time next week, you could perhaps give an opinion as to how good the answer was. So, food for thought.
and that's in the chat, right?
Yeah,
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 you just put it there.
I just put the link into the Perplexity search that I did.
I see. Yep.
And it's a downloadable document, so it's quite a research document, but it needs the experts to discern over the quality of the output.
Gotcha. No, I'll definitely take a look at that, saving it now, and yeah, let's reference that.
Thanks, Rick. Anyone else got any questions? Any comments, supports, happy feelings? Didn't like it? Tell us. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm just disappointed, Larry. You're not further ahead on your exponential growth curve. So what can we do to help you get to that inflection point? The guy who I'm referring to knows all about exponential organizations, and he's a vice provost in a university in Kenya. And his massive transformational purpose is to produce 1 million African entrepreneurs. So he thinks big, and you
Yeah.
might want to go on his coattails with some of the
I
things that
love the
he's doing.
connections.
Yeah.
Yeah. Larry, let me turn it back on you. Is there anything within GRC that we could help you? Like Rick that was a great connection. Is there any other kind of connections you could look for that maybe Mr. David Winslow, because he knows everybody, could open for you?
Yeah. Well, to that point, so our partners with Roots Africa love their thesis. I think it's not a million of individuals, but I think what is it, shy 13,000 change makers or 13,000 farmers or
Yeah,
folks
yeah, I
have been
think it's
impacted.
I think they're growing at over 1,000 farmers a year right now. Yep.
Right. Um, so yeah, I mean, if there's ways to which we can support their efforts and other people that share that same thesis of trying to get more ag entrepreneurs in the continent, that would be great. Um, I really do support and believe in what they're doing. And so, and sorry to disappoint. Maybe, uh, maybe next session we could be less
Well,
disappointed.
well, the thing about incremental change, you don't know what's happening while it's going on. And then all of a sudden, if you aim for the inflection point, things can scale. So you can't predict when the inflection point comes. So
That is
Dave
true.
Winslow was asking in chat, have you worked with Moringa?
Oh, well, yeah, moringa. I haven't, but it's really cool. I think there are certain species of moringa that grow. It's like a super, I call it a super species. Isn't there like certain types of moringa that grow in areas that are in abject poverty throughout the world? I think,
Yeah,
David.
I don't know a ton about it, Larry. It's just, yeah, I guess the oil is rich in protein and stuff, and it grows fast. And there's a couple of people that I know that are working on moringa projects, but I think they're more in the east, uh, like in Kenya. So I'm not
Yeah,
sure that you'd overlap them necessarily, but
I haven't worked with it, but it's awesome, and I'll never turn down moringa. So yeah.
That's great. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Larry here? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you joining us today. We will resume next week with session number 2, where we go more into how Larry's been able to crack the funding around these projects, how he's been able to secure carbon credit monetization sources, and how he's used that to scale projects as well. So really looking forward to next week. Larry, thank you so much for giving us a great foundation to build upon. And thank you all for joining today. I appreciate you so much.
To meet you all.